Drupal Night, sponsored by BioRaft. My name is Eric Byrant. I'm one of the lead software engineers at BioRaft. We are very fortunate tonight to have Jacob here. Jacob's been a member of the Drupal community for over 9 years and is the lead maintainer of Webform for Drupal 8. While he's getting set up, do we have any first-timers here? Anybody who's here for the first time? Raise your hand. Welcome. Welcome. Everybody, round of applause for our first-timers. If you have any questions about Drupal nights or the meetups themselves, either find myself or find Mike in the back with the big Drupal shirt, who's got a marvelous singing voice. And without further ado, I'm going to pass this over to Jacob. Everybody welcome Jacob.
Mirror is down at the bottom.
Show
Up a
mirror.
little bit. No.
You don't want mirror?
Do you want
I want a mirror exactly there.
How many developers does it take?
Yes.
That's right.
This is sort of like designer work.
Good. Then we'll make it nice and big. I have no problem with that.
Progress.
Jeez.
Get there.
All right.
All right, so everyone can see that, and that's really what that's just. I don't mind it. It's very fun. Right. Reset. Good. Okay, guys, thanks for coming. Now, it's like a 50-minute presentation. I'll leave a lot of room at the end for questions. Titles there is this or that. I'm going to do an introduction first of, my name is Rockowitz, Drupal developer and software architect. I'm known as Rockowitz on the web, and yes, I built and maintain the Webform module for Drupal 8.
Thank you.
All right. So this slide is for me. This is what this presentation is not about, so I can be focused on talking about what I want to talk about. And I'm not going to go into the history of the Webform module, installing the Webform module. There's a lot of information on Drupal.org. The alternatives to the Webform module. I'm really not going to talk about the future of the Webform module or the roadmap. I'm just focused on what we got here and now. I'm staying away from theming and styling web forms or forms really in Drupal. And managing submissions is something I'm going to touch upon. It's just the data coming in. I'm just not going to talk a lot about it because my real focus here is just talk about building awesome forms using the Webform module. And my clicker working. So how do you build forms in Drupal? For this presentation, there's the Webform module for that. There's kind of the rhythm of this one. Yeah. Now you can see it.
There's a surprise twist there, okay.
Well, I wanted to have like some pattern to go with here. Oh, and sorry, I'm not using the mic. Do I have to use the mic? You need it recorded up. By the way, this deck is already online recorded, but I will use the mic. It's okay. This is the start of it. So, okay, the Webform module is a powerful and flexible open source form builder and submission manager for Drupal 8. And this is kind of where I've settled on it. It provides all the features expected from an enterprise proprietary form builder combined with the flexibility and openness of Drupal. And flexibility and openness of Drupal is probably one of the most important aspects of Webform module that I want to get to as we move through this presentation. And I really do want to start with just some context of what Webform module is. It just builds forms. And this is a contact form similar to what's in the contact module in core. It's a very simple form, 4 fields. And this is the backend Webform builder. And it just gives you not a WYSIWYG, but a drag and drop UI to add elements and move them around and see what's going on in your form. Can you guys see this okay, or should I tweak it a little bit?
Tweak.
Tweak, right?
Maybe focus is what we need.
On the projector, right?
Yeah.
Let's try this. Oh, I can't make this bigger so you guys can't see the slide. Let's go scan it and see if that makes it crisper. Not much I can do. I guess we're going to have to deal with it. I'll make sure to talk about what's on screen if we can't see it, but I'll make it work. All right, so I'm just trying to set some context of just showing you the back end for the form, the web form builder, and then you can also edit the source, which I'm going to demo, but this is the source editor for the web form module. And finally, this is a submission, which is just the data coming in from someone submitting a contact form. This is filled in with some Latin text. And just the overall use case for the web form module, it's about building a form or copying a template, publishing this form on your site as a page node or block, and collecting these submissions, sending out confirmations and notifications, which is a nice way to say email. And you can review these results online, then you can distribute, and this is kind of something I've focused on, is distribute these results as, you can download it as a CSV and give them to someone, or you can remote post this data to a third-party server or CRM. And this is the general use case. It's build your form, collect that data, and distribute that data. And I consider sending an email distributing that data. And I'm going to give you like the elevator pitch, which, to start off, is like, all right. So it's just a clean install. What I like to do in this elevator pitch is just, I can close these messages, is go to the contact form, and we just looked at it, but for the demo, I like to just like add a company field. So basically I go into add element, let's do a text field, add company, scroll down. No, I'll get into the options later. I've just added to the bottom, and if we review it, we're going to have a company field at the bottom. Now, I've done this very simply. There's a little mistake here where it just says company should say your company should be required. And you can update that information in the UI here, checking off required and adding it. What I like to do is just show you the source mode where you can actually cut and paste it, pull it out, bring it in, and copy. What's really powerful about this view for someone, you can edit all the labels on your elements at once. If you really know Drupal and know form API, you can just write your form. Personally, I don't use the UI because I just type it out. I'll use the UI when I lose track of something. I need to know a certain setting. And hit save. And that was a good opportunity to show you the test tab, which just pre-fills out the form with Latin text, but you have full control of this text. So for your clients, you can enter in what type of email address you want to use for testing. And I'm going to submit the submission. And now I'm going to go back. And I'm just, this is my moment to show you the back end for getting a submission. So you get your results table, and here's the first result that came in. You can customize the columns, you can do some filtering, you can click through, and three options that are here is you can flag something, you can lock a submission so no one can edit it. That's also something you can automate so that at the point when you're done with a submission, you can lock it so no one can touch it. You can add some notes to it. And then you can click through. And pretty basic, you can review your data. I mean, the things I'll point out is there's a table view. If you have a lot of elements, this is the best way to look at all that data because it just creates a left to right column table and you can just scan through all that information. The only other tab that's really important to emphasize here is there's a resend tab for the emails. And this is the best way to preview your emails and tweak them and see what's going on. This email is just including the message, but if you're a really complex message, you can come in here and get a peek at it. And you keep tweaking that template and previewing it. So what I also like to add is a touch of like what the full capabilities are. And what I'm going to do is just show some, this is also going to some design aspect where there's support for Flexbox, which allows for multi-column layouts. So I'm just adding this container called the Flexbox. This is a CS3 spec, and I'm laying this out in 2 columns. And what I like to also do is just show like some of the nuanced details. Is there's support for horizontal rules, which might seem silly, but it makes it easier for someone who's not a designer, doesn't know CSS, to just insert a rule. I'm going to do it as a big dotted rule thing. And hit save. And this I have to bring up. You just start getting the idea that you can really lay out anything you want in the Webform module. I'm going to keep going, we'll come back to that in a second. So, yeah, there's a lot going on here. You're seeing a lot of features and screens and properties. And how do you discover what the Webform module can do? And there are examples for that. And the Webform module provides examples and demos that can be used as a starting point for building forms and applications. And so there are examples and demos of every type of element. You go to a form, kitchen sink, I'll show it to you, and you see every element. You can play with those. There's an example of a multi-set form just to get you started to see how to configure it, and examples of conditional logic. And there is also an advanced example of Flexbox where you can do really complex layouts. And the demos are more than just a form. It's usually a series of forms or nodes working together to accomplish an application. Event registration, I'll kind of keep coming back to, but it's the idea that you have events on your site and you want to have a registration form associated with those events and you want to have people register. And that demo just shows you how to set it up, how to incorporate the blocks, track the data, and it's just trying to get you started. Also implementing certain key features that are useful for events. And I'll come back to those as we move on. So the example style guide, and that's what it's called, is just really helpful and completely customizable. So for a lot of sites, you should go in and tweak it to meet your needs. Take out the elements you're not going to use, have your designers look at it. It gives your designers a great way to see everything that's going on with your forms on your site. And I'll give you a quick demo of that. So the style guide is definitely the kitchen sink. And we're going to go into these, but this has preview turned on so you can see your wizard, see your multi-steps, how they're going to lay out. It even has a required, this is just an option that you check off to have a required indicator. And I think everyone's familiar with these standard form elements, but you start to get into the little nuances with help tips and all the date elements, and you're seeing what's going on there. And then these are some of the advanced enhancements starting to appear, which is international phone number support, file uploads, table selects. My images, my cute kittens are missing. Give me 1 second to fix that problem. I like my cute kittens. I apologize. I made the mistake of not turning on Wi-Fi. Let's see if this will work. Good. Let's get my kittens back. There's my kittens. This you can select. Which is useful. Certain sites, I had someone talking about they're doing barn order forms and needed to show barn doors, and they really needed this feature to kind of illustrate the different colors and types. Now you get into rating, there's signature elements. Entity references are fully supported, so you can have different variations, including autocomplete selects. We're getting toward the end of this, but you guys see that this is everything. Composites are just like address elements. This is some map support. And toward the bottom, this is one of the most important sections. This is really where your designers will know how your forms are going to lay out. So this is just an example of all the different, how an element is going to lay out with the prefix, suffix, when it's required, all the different types of tooltips. There's even a floating one, the input mask, so you can kind of work on that. And then there's some examples of containers and every horizontal rule that's included. Now I want to emphasize, these are just
style classes that you can use for horizontal rules. You can define your own styles, override this, and use whatever your design, your theme is using. If you're using Bootstrap, you're going to want to use Bootstrap-specific styles. And then there's examples of these messages, which are all dismissible, finally flexible. It's a lot. Take your time, go through it. I'll probably keep emphasizing that as we're talking. And this is a quick one, example of a style wizard, and you can just kind of click through and get familiar with how it works. That's pretty much it for the demos. Let me keep going. So, where do you start? How do you start building forms? And there are templates for that. That's, by the way, like I'm not heavily talking about installing, but there's a Webform templates module you turn on, and it gives you this ability to define templates. And templates are forms that can be copied to create new forms. And these are like the caveats here. Templates are just reusable forms. You're checking a box and saying this form's going to be a template. A form created from a template is a copy. So once it's a duplicate, that's the terminology in Drupal. And once you go create that copy, that goes off and lives on its own. And if you change the template, it's not going to affect that form that's been copied. And this is an example of a web form template, just a feedback form. And I'm going to quickly show that to you because I use it further. And this is turned on. There's a template tab. And these are just you can delete these. You can pick your own. You can alter them. They're just some suggestions to start people off. And there's a preview. And then you can select it. Just hit save. And there you go, you've got your own feedback template. What's really important is this is a great way to define the default settings. So if you have certain types of email settings you want someone to use, you define it in your template and you tell your form builders, site builders to use these templates to get things started.
So, quick question.
Sure.
A template you can turn into a regular form?
Yeah, it's a copy of a form.
Okay,
Yeah.
great.
But you can't, once you make a form a template, you can't really use it as a form. It doesn't save data. It's just kind of meant to be a starting point.
Oh,
You just make a copy.
okay.
It's
Awesome.
it's just a checkbox. I won't even show it to you into settings. Oh. So how do you build awesome forms? Going back to that question is there are elements for that. And a form, this is the definition of what a form is. A form is a collection of elements which includes inputs, composites, containers, and pages that are used to collect a submission. And the anatomy of a form, you start off with elements, and it's important. Anything in Drupal is an element that's displayed on a page. I mean, that's just a way to look at it. If you have a header, that's an element. But for forms, we get into what I'm going to call inputs. And inputs is an element that collects a value. And composites are a collection of inputs used to collect a group of values. An address is a great example of a composite element. And I'll go into some other examples, and containers are just an element that holds sub-elements. A page, a multi-site form is a container. A details element is a container, or a field set's a container. A div can be used as a container. And pages I'm just calling out because pages are used to build multi-site forms. It's just another variation of container. And there are just many different types of elements available, and we'll go through some of these. And we kind of go through the kitchen sink is also organized in this way, these categories. And just the anatomy of a form element. So I broke it down into these sections, and the user experience is very close to this. It's where you're defining your element, your definition, your name, the cardinality, whether it's multiple value, the default value. And then there's a lot of availability of tweaking the labels, the title, the description, the help text, and more. And then you can get into the display of that element or the input, where you can set up prefixes and suffixes before the input. You can set up input masks. Then we get into validation, which everyone's familiar with required, but you also have unique validation for certain inputs. You can set up patterns for certain inputs, and then you have counters, word and character counters for text inputs. And these are all optional. And then finally you get into, everyone needs this, is conditional logic, which lets you hide and show, require or disable elements based on the value of other elements. And the last one, you have full access controls of all your elements, which means you can define which elements are visible to which users in which state. And that makes it possible to create some more advanced workflows. I mean, the best example is adding administrative notes to a form after it's been submitted. And finally, the advanced tab gets into, you can add custom attributes to every aspect. You can add custom attributes to every aspect of an element or really anything in the web form module. When you say custom attributes, It really is meaning HTML attributes, and that means you can add custom classes, custom styles, and down to custom HTML attributes. And an example of the custom HTML attributes would be adding custom data tags for Google Analytics and tracking. So you might have an element that you want to track in a certain way, and you might want to add a data parameter, a data attribute to that. You can also use those attributes where you just use formal alter hooks and do behaviors off of those. So this is a web form element, edit form, sorry. I think I want to demo it. So this is an example of conditional logic, especially because it's hard to see the screens. So yeah, I'm going to go with the concept that we're going to go through these fast, and then I'm just going to show it to you so we can make it bigger. There are advanced settings. This is where I start talking about you can do your wrapper element and your element. So the wrapper is what goes around the form element. So that's the container that your, for example, title, your label of your text input, and your text will go into, and then you can set up attributes within that single text input. So the types of inputs, I mean, people are familiar with a lot of these. You have text inputs, text fields, options. I'm calling out options because people just have to know that that's how these types of inputs are driven, off of a set of options, which include checkboxes, radios, selects, buttons, and that keyboard images are kind of options. File uploads, it's important to emphasize that there's just not one singular file upload element. In the Webform module, there's about 4 or 5 based on media type. The benefit is in multimedia, if you pick a video upload element and someone hits upload on their phone, it'll open the video recorder, and the same thing happens with audio. Widgets are just my little advanced elements, which we're talking about, like ratings, signatures, phones, toggles, and more. I mean, people are adding new elements as people are starting to use the module. And then NT references, I assume people are familiar with NT references. That's and for someone new to Drupal, I think NT references are important. I think it's a second to point out. It's the idea that you have a form, you're collecting data, and you can have this element point to a node or a piece of content or anything on your site. It's a reference to some content in Drupal. It's very powerful because you can say select a user, select your user account, you can record in the background. It's really one of the most powerful aspects of Drupal is it builds relationships between your content. Containers, I'm talking about all of these, and I think people are getting familiar with them. Now this is time to get into composites. So I said they're a group of elements working together, like values. So likers are a way to just collect surveys. It's a question and answer, usually laid out in a grid. And address, these are really variations of address. So you can define the location. The location basically goes into Google Maps and pulls the location string and all the metadata about the location. Address is where you're asking someone to enter in the information. Contact is you're asking a little more information about that person, which would just be like their name or email. And there's support for links and URLs and names. So the example of the name composite is really if you were like building like a booking system and you wanted to get all the passengers' first name, last name, and age. And you can define your own custom composite elements. So basically you can build anything you want. I'm not going to do a big demo of that, but it's pretty easy to get started with it. Now, don't forget you can preview all available elements while you're in the UI. And so for this demo, I'm going to go back to, I'll use this one. I'm going to add an element that I kind of went through really quickly, but there's a show preview, which will, what you saw in the style guide is pretty much what you see here, but it's the context of actually building a form. And it's helpful if you just forget what type of element, you're like, I think I need this type of element, you can get a quick preview of it. What I'm going to do, I'm going to start simple again and add a text field. And this is, anyone new to Drupal, this is something you should spend some time with. You have to just play with things. So I'm going to just do a demo of adding a simple text field. I'm not going to do cardinality, but I'm going to say this. You should fill things out and get comfortable with it. By the way, I don't recommend doing live with anything like this one. I think it's important that you see everything in action. And typing on hand has been fun. Yeah, typing is twice as long. Here it is. Preview. Right. Getting the next slide. I think people are familiar with a lot of these. These are in the validation, I want to emphasize you can set customer messages for every single aspect of validation. So there's a default message, and it actually tells you. And some of these will tell you the default. Let's do some character counts, and we'll go with 120. So add it. It's there. View. So you start to see all the little nuances. So this is the help text, and it gives you a little bubble. And you got to decide on your use case for your form. I use these help text bubbles for descriptions that people only need to read once, and when they come back to the form, they'll never read it again, so it makes the form nice and clean. Descriptions are really important. If you just need to tell someone something, you just display that text. And the more, I have very specific use cases. When someone wants that ridiculous amount of help text that just gets into like a definition, and you got to just tuck it away because your form will get overwhelming. And this is the character count. The only other aspect, well, let's see. Sorry, I lost my training of thought for a second. I'm going to jump back and show you a couple other tabs on the element. You can set up conditional logic, which is just how basically saying this is visible if a certain value is checked. Advanced, this is where you get into these attributes, and this is the class names, styles, and this is where you literally are adding HTML attributes to the wrapper. And finally, access controls. I think people are familiar with this. This is literally just saying who can view, update, down to role, user, permission. And what's good about showing that to you is that same access controls apply to the whole form as well. So how do you send emails and push data to a CRM? Well, there's a handler for that. Handlers are used to route submitted data to applications and send email notifications. The use cases for a handler, email is the most classic one. Someone submits a form and you want to send some emails out. What I really have seen is people are also taking web forms and pushing data to CRMs. I personally have done stuff to push data to Salesforce. Another example is pushing data to subscribe someone to a mailing list, which is there's a Webform MailChimp module which will do that in a handler. You add it to your form. And the last two are kind of to react to they're kind of ways to flag a submission based on submitted values, because handlers support conditional logic. So you can say if someone's on that feedback form, if someone says this is a bug, you could flag the submission and say this is a bug and have someone react to it. You can also conditionally change aspects of the form. The best example is changing the confirmation message based on, for example, on the feedback form, if they say it's a bug, you can say, well, we'll get back to you in 24 hours. If it's a complaint, you can say we'll get back to you in a week. And these are the handlers that ship with the Webform module. So the email handler just sends an email, and I'll demo it. And the scheduled email handler and this is what's beautiful about handlers, they're plugins so you can extend them. So a scheduled email handler is just the email handler extended to support scheduling an email to be sent after the form's been submitted. It's used in the event registration demo. That one works really well because you want to, for example, someone registers for an event, you want to send them a reminder a day before the event. And that's what the scheduled email handler allows you to do, is say, send an email out a day before this event. And you could even send reminders if someone didn't fill out, they saved a draft. When they save the draft, you can say, well, if they don't finish this, send them a reminder in a week. Remote notes from the demo, it's really about just taking that data and pushing it somewhere. Actions and settings is that stuff to kind of tweak things on a submission, like flagging, or tweak things on the web form. It's like lightweight rules would be the best way to describe it for somebody that's very Drupal oriented. It just makes it possible to tweak things. And since they support conditional logic, it makes it easy to conditionally tweak things. And the debug handler is just a way to show the data. There's a handler called the debug handler, shows you all the data coming through. And actually, just throw it out there, all these handlers support a debug checkbox. And what that does is if you run into an issue with what's going on, turn on the debug and you'll see the data, the response codes, and it just helps you figure out what's going on. And when we give a demo of the email handler, well, actually, the email handler I'm just going to show you. I'm going to delete this because I'm going to have my experimental on it there. Go over to settings, email handlers. So there's a confirmation, which we hit edit. And this this just sends a very simple confirmation. Every aspect of the email going out is customizable. You can see that it's like to CCBC from name, it gets into everything. There's even twig support with the message body, so you can define a twig template and have, whatever styles you want to go into it. That supports simultaneous conditionals. And you can pick what elements are going out. For people that are more advanced, you can get into custom header settings like return path, sender path. These are all also customizable on a global level, so if you're trying to deal with some spam issues, this is a place to go. And debugging, we'll show it on screen. And I'll just show this one on screen. But what I do want to show you is there's support for conditional routing. I don't know if the term is conditional routing, but routing the email based on selected options of a certain element. So this form is a feedback form, so it says type of feedback, and it has these 3 options: comments, report a bug, and questions. I'm tokenizing the site now, but you can have multiple emails. So you can have comments at example.com, bug, and this one doesn't auto-fit, but you get the idea. And it also supports the other elements, so if you have other options, you can route emails based on that. I'm going to close this one. And what I want to do for this demo is show you the remote post handler. So I'm going to use my broken example URL because it works well. Well, it doesn't work well, but that's the point. With web forms and forms in general, you have kind of different states. The most common one is someone submits a form, it's completed, you want to take that data and send it somewhere, and that's why that's the first option, and that's what we're going to demo. And you can also pass in custom data attributes to those parameters that are being sent off. So you can send API keys in the post. But if a submission is updated, you can also post that data and delete it. By default, only the elements that you've created are going to be sent out to the CRM, for example. You can pick other pieces of data, like the submission ID or notes, but for default, I just send these for it. What I do want to emphasize, and you can even have conditional logic with remote posts. And inside it's just so. This is an important one for some people to note, is like you can add to the header options going out to the remote post, you can add custom parameters. They're just guzzle parameters, but this is where certain API endpoints want API keys submitted that way. And this is the most important thing if you're doing anything with remote posts, is turn on the debugger when you start out, because it's the only way you're going to know if something's going wrong.
Can you go back just a second and show what those post options were?
Sure. There's not much. It's just post and get, and it's your form parameter. This is important. I've struggled with this one. There's some limitations to remote post, like to building a generic remote post handler for everyone. It doesn't cover every use case. Like I have had to do it doesn't do OAuth. So if you're going to do OAuth, for example, what you do is extend this and add your OAuth authentication right before you call the parent remote post handler. It's also just a good way to get you started because it has some helpful code examples in there. Save. Use the test tag. We're going to get a whopping failure. First off, we can see our email confirmation. That helps you just to see the email going out, confirm it. Especially if you do custom formatting, it's a good way to quickly see it. And the remote post failed. But what's good about it is it shows you why it failed. And it shows you, this is a good moment to be like, the web form stores data really simply. It's flat. I just want to emphasize, it's your element names, you name your elements, you get your associative array of elements, and it doesn't go more than 2 levels deep, because if you support composites or multiples, it'll be an array of a couple of elements. And that's the data going out, and then we see that CloudFront's unhappy with us because we're not supposed to be posting data to them, and it shows you all that data here. And this is the default message. There's a ticket that someone just created, and I'm probably going to work on it, is we're going to start allowing people to customize these messages based on status codes. So if it's a catastrophic failure, you can tell someone, okay, contact someone. Okay. Okay, take a break here. So now we're getting to the other side of things. So we built a form, we collected our data. Now you go to, how do you tweak and adjust the behavior and look and feel of your web forms? And there are settings for that. And this is a really important slide because The Webform module ships with a ton of features and functionality, but it ships with reasonable default settings. And everything's customizable. You don't need to tweak everything when you start out. Keep it simple. And I have this slide to just try to give you the lay of the land. It actually took me a year to figure out how to structure all these settings in some way where there's a rhythm that you can go through it and get familiar with it. And the idea of going, top to bottom, left to right is yes, you have your general settings where you're just saying the title of the form, whether it's a template, and then you get into your nuances of your form. Does it have a preview? What does the wizard look like? I have the features of that, but then you have your form, and someone submits a form and you're going to get a submission, and you can control how submissions work. For example, you could say you want to let someone save a draft. And then finally, once that submission's in, you get to your confirmation. And that's just a dedicated tab, but it's really important to have full control of your confirmation, to decide what's returned to the user, how it's returned. And then we've talked about cameras, and that's pretty much a dedicated thing, is what do you do? Submission's in, you send a confirmation to the user, what do you do with that data? And the last two are kind of peripheral, but they're important, is the Webform module supports CSS and JavaScript injection, where you can do, and injection is such a rough word, but it's basically you can go in and tweak your form a little bit. And that's always, forms are a pain in the ass. Sorry, I'm not going to curse, but you have like little margin issues when you're laying out things. You might want to tweak some little nuance. And that's really for CSS. You can just go in and adjust it. With the JavaScript, sometimes you can't get everything done in conditional logic, and you'll need to write a little JavaScript to tweak something. You can also use the JS handler to tweak some of the behaviors. Like if you have a custom widget, you can go in and tweak how fast the slide outs are and adjust those settings. And if you look at the JavaScript, that's always supported at the top. You get a list of all the settings and you can override those defaults. And so just a quick walk through some of these tabs. It's like the general ones, you can disable the saving of results so that the data never hits Drupal. It just, just to be clear, never hits the database. I want to rephrase that because that's the important concept is you could have these forms be kind of, they're just out there, so hit submit, it goes into Drupal, but it never gets stored or written anywhere on the server. It just gets sent out to an email or the remote post. Allows you to take that data and put it to a secure location like a CRM. This is where you can set the web form to be used as a template. You can customize the URL aliases of the form. You can Ajaxify forms, just a checkbox, and then the form will work using Ajax. And if there's third-party settings, and one of the underlying themes now for the rest of this deck is going to be about spam protection, is you should do it. And if you turn on Honeypot Antibot, you're going to get the ability to turn that on per form or for every form. With form settings, this is also with the event registration model, the demo of that, is you can set open and close dates of your forms, so you can schedule them to open, and when the event passes, you can close them. You can customize every message and label, and we'll just show it to you. You can also pre-populate a form using query string parameters, tweaking the multi-step form, how the progress bar is going to look, and this is where you can enable previews. With settings, once again, this is like an ongoing, everything's customizable. So with submissions, any message displayed related to a submission, you can tweak. You can set up submission limits on almost every aspect, per form, per user, per source entity, and I'll explain source entity a little later. You can set up saving your drafts, and submission purging is a little important. If you do drafts for anonymous users, you're definitely going to want to follow up with submission purging. So anonymous users can save a draft and it'll store in their session, but if they don't come back, you're going to want to clean that data out. And there's also support for autofilling, so if someone filled out a form previously and come back to it, they'll take their last submission and fill out certain selected fields. It helps just to speed up the process. With confirmation messages, it's just every possible confirmation supported. People find a lot of issues. You can get a dedicated confirmation page inline, you can do a status, there's even a modal confirmation, so using Ajax, it'll just pop up a modal dialog. And then ultimately, you can also redirect to external or internal URLs. And this is the custom CSS and JavaScript. Yeah, it makes you really to tweak your fonts and little margins and adjustments. And access controls. So you can set full access controls on who can access the form, who can update, who can administer. For a client, I just had to add the ability to control who can test a form, because I had some people that just needed the ability to click on that test tab to fill it out, nothing else. And I'm going to go crazy with the look and feel. Sorry to jump ahead. Let's stick to this form that we have here. start to get the idea, like, here's all the settings. This is kind of helpful to break things down into, you can look at your different containers. Ajax is literally a checkbox if you want to use it. Let's see. The behaviors I don't talk to about in slides, so I'm just going to take a second. These are little nuanced tweaks you can make to your form. It just depends on your use case. So, for example, some people need a reset button. It's generally not recommended, but you can turn that on. You can also prevent people from clicking submit twice by preventing duplicate submissions. Disabling client-side validation, this is an interesting one right now because, let's put it this way. HTML5 client-side validation is broken when it comes to accessibility. I only discovered it like a week or two ago because I finally got a screen reader on and the behavior that someone had filed and it was like, I saw it and I was like, there is no solution here. So HTML5 allows you to, in your input, say it's required. That makes a lot of sense. I'm going to hit submit. It says you didn't fill it out. Go back to the screen reader. When someone goes into an input and it says required, it says input invalid to the person. Automatically, it's a blank input. And because it has that required attribute, I think it's in IE, it literally says the input is invalid before someone even started typing. It's probably what, and there's issues on Drupal.org to remove client-side validation from Drupal 8, like turn it off because of these accessibility issues. So if you are trying to have good accessibility, you might need to turn off client-side validation. There are alternatives. You could use this inline form errors, turn that off. You can just see there's every nuance you need to go through and experiment with them. That's what these little help bubbles are trying to help you do. Confirmation, submissions. Same thing, you have little submission behaviors where you can say something's confidential, not store the right, their IP address. It's pretty self-explanatory as you go through. These are little tweaks you can make. This one is literally like, when you go to a confirmation page, it passes a token to know exactly what the submission is, and some users don't want to have that for Google Analytics. They want a clean URL. I'm going to keep going, because this is a big question. Should you customize everything, or should you customize nothing? Well, this is kind of starting off with some just tips for managing settings and behaviors. Is you got to know what's possible and impossible. That applies to every module you install in Drupal. You got to go through all the settings and look at them and try to understand what's going on. So you know what you can do and know what you can't do. And yet keep it simple. I mean, I even for my clients, I go out of my way to keep their implementation as simple as possible because you can't turn off certain elements that they don't need. I'll get into that in a little bit. And this goes to the developers in here. It's like default settings can be applied using some hooks. Like hook Webform create, you can go in and when someone creates a form, you can set recommended defaults. If you want certain behaviors, you can just say, I want it to work this way, or I want the URLs to be structured this way. And templates are probably the easiest way to define default settings, because you can go in and create your perfect starting form with the exact confirmation page, the exact confirmation message, and someone just starts off and it just works. So we've only talked about web form settings. And now, how can you change the global default settings? And this is a little nuanced in the Webform module where I made a decision that you're in a web form, it's called settings. When you're talking about global stuff, there's configuration for that. And configuration defines the default features, functionality, and behaviors available to all web forms. And this is where there are things you need to pay attention to when you're installing a Webform module, things you should configure. Private file access for file uploads is just critical. I mean, if you're going to do any type of public file, like if you're going to have a file upload on your site, you need to use a private file system. There's just some security issues, and actually when you go into configure it, it'll point you to the PSAs related to this. Spam protection is just critical for everyone. You have to have some sort of spam protection on your site or you won't be happy. And available elements, I think, is an important one because there's a lot you've seen like this kitchen sink of a ton of elements. And you should go in and turn off the ones you don't need. Going back to file uploads, if you don't need file uploads, turn them off. It's just not worth it. It's not worth having on. It's just confusing to people. There are some API keys that Google Map integration requires an API key. And reusable options, which is really easier to demo, but you want to go in and decide what your sets of options you want to make available to users. There's a lot installed by default. You can delete a few of those. And this also, with configuration, has a similar rhythm that we talked about in Webform settings where you have your forms, which contain elements, which have options, and then you get into your submission, handlers, and exporters is what's being used to control creating a CSV, to download that data, to generate a spreadsheet, to export to Excel. And libraries, all those fancy enhancements are third-party external libraries, and you might want to also configure those if you're not using them. And advanced, I'm going to demo it, but advanced is just this concept like, there's advanced settings. You can turn off every little feature that you might not want. If there's a nuance, one example would be you can turn off, there's inline videos, help tutorial videos, but there's some issue with it's using YouTube and it drops a cookie, and that's a problem in the EU. And there's a setting to turn that off, or have it not open inside your site and link off to YouTube. And you can turn off any little promotion or dialogue that you don't want. You can even say, I don't want to use the off-canvas string, I want to use dialogues. I'm going to just demo elements, options, and libraries. And elements is, keep jumping ahead like one. All right. So get to configuration, just go up to the top level. And talk about elements for a second. So this is where your designer is going to have a lot of fun and define default classes that can be used for all your elements. By default, we're just using what's common in core. So by the way, what this means is you can add a messages container around any element. So you can have it look nice and green with a little warning. These are all the styles for horizontal rules, and you go customize these and say, I don't want these, I want certain ones. If you have certain theme styles that you want to put in for horizontal rules, you can do that. And you get into your HTML markup. But which really, I want to spend a second on. And then, by the way, this is all the file uploads. So if you're supporting video or audio, these are the file extensions that are being supported. So this is where you go and set your element types. And there's a great example of an element that is supported and off by default. And someone made a great observation. So passwords are off by default because Drupal stores the data in plain text, which is not great. You don't want to ask them to take a password and then store it in plain text. So we turned it off, and there's even a warning to tell you, as plain text, don't use this. But it's really useful. If you're doing any type of CRM integration and it's secure and you're sending the data off using HTTPS, there's no reason why you can't use a password. Now I'm going to go back up. So options, let's just take a second. So options are used by select. Sure.
Can you specify a specific field should not save data in the database, or is it all or nothing?
Like in a form, like certain ones, oh, that's great. No, but if you file a ticket, I don't see it. That's one that would be really tucked away because it can be confusing to users, but I get the idea. I mean, keep in mind, we're going to get to the see, I'm offering the ticket answer, but we're going to get to the Drupal answer in a second to that question. It's a good question. All right, you'll see it in a second. You have checkboxes. These are just options that you can use for select menu checkboxes and radios and their defaults. And I just went out and looked at generally what people are doing, and they're all available to you with, what I'd like to show you is country codes. You can go in and edit this. You have your list of countries, and what's more powerful is there's a source editor, so it's really quickly to enter options and get them started. You should spend some time looking at these and decide what you need and what you don't need, and turn them off and delete them. You start seeing all the likers, and the likers are down here, all your different relationships. Even the cute kittens support reusable image sets, which is really a nice feature. Someone actually sponsored this feature because they had so many barn doors they needed to make them reusable, so they set this up. Jumping over to libraries, which is something I want to spend a second talking about. Webform module includes, it supports like 12 different external libraries. It's about getting off the island and making it possible to just have all this feature and functionality using other open source packages. You have to spend a second dealing with it. There's a lot of options. If you're familiar with Drush, there's Drush commands to quickly download all the libraries. You can also do a Drush command to update your composer file and pull in the libraries. There's a little trick I was talking about before is, like, these libraries are all optional. I'm going to jump down just to emphasize that. If you can decide which libraries you want on your site and turn them off, and the features will just go away, and if an element's associated with it, it'll go away. For people who are familiar with a lot of front-end libraries, Select 2 and Chosen are both supported. What they do is make multiple select menus not suck. It makes it a nice user experience, but you shouldn't have both on. You should use one or the other. I kind of went with Select 2 because Drupal is maybe moving in that direction, but Chosen is just as good. The only other thing with the libraries and Freeboard, and this is like Drupal struggling with it, we're trying to get it easy to build things, and Dries threw this stat out that like 60% of the people don't use Composer, so you're like, okay, you got 12 libraries here. I just recently started experimenting. There's a zipped archive available of all the libraries, so if you're not doing anything command line, you can go and get all the libraries and just drop them on your site. And it's experimental, and I want to see if people start using it. I'm probably going to have to make a decision how I'm going to support that. Moving on. So there's a configuration for that. It's like that's generally my mindset. So you ask that question, can you have it? I'm like, yeah. I really am open to any feature that is easy to implement, easy to test, easy to track, and not going to cause regressions. It's like, and if there's a strong use case for it. Sometimes it's like, because we get to the next answer that's really good. So what if you can't configure something via the user interface? Well, there's a module hook or template for that, and that's really the case in the Webform modules. Like every single thing is customizable. And you need a certain feature, like even removing that piece of data. It's very easy. These Webform submissions are entities, so you can just go in right before it's saved and take out that data and have it not visible and write all the custom logic to turn off. You can write the logic to even turn off the element. So we're going to switch gears and talk about how do you place a web form on your site. So you built this form and you want to kind of integrate it into your site. Very common thing is there are web form blocks for that. And web form blocks are blocks that just display a web form. And web form blocks, just make it easy to include a web form within layouts or panels. Blocks are just, for people new to Drupal, it's like just this thing you can place anywhere on your site or on your page. There's two nuances to blocks. You can place it anywhere on your page, top, left, right, bottom, or you can place it anywhere on your site. You can decide where that block is going to appear, or where that web form is going to appear. And a web form block can just go anywhere, and it's a really flexible system. And the demo is really pretty simple because what's cool about this demo is it's simple, but it gives me an opportunity to show you something really nuanced about the web form module for Drupal. So I'm going to add the contact form to the sidebar, autofill. This is where you control the visibility of this and which pages it appears on, but I'm really going to just go in and put it in the second sidebar. So I put this contact form that we started out with, and it's there, and I go back to the thing. And I jump back to the feedback form. I really don't want to submit it here, so I'm going to jump all the way to the home page. Now it's on my home page. Let's just start filling it out because you're going to start seeing something. So I filled it out once when I did the demo on the contact form, the first demo. Now it's in the sidebar. I'm going to go into this node that's just been created and submit it here. This is going to be the third submission. And we're back to the home page. So let's do one more. This is where quick links works really nice because you can go in here and say, let me look at the results. And we've done it 4 times.
I like that.
Yeah. We've done it 4 times, and here's the nuance that you can see. So the block was created, I submitted 4 times. The web forms track where the data is coming from. So it's tracking which page you submitted the form on. So these are the home pages because there's really not an entity associated with it. But you're seeing that it's starting to say, okay, it was submitted on this page. So this submission is associated with that. Basically, it took that, in this example, it took that contact form and almost made it like a comment form or a feedback, site-wide feedback form where you can say, give us feedback across our whole site on these pages. And it's called a source entity relationship when you start getting into the code. And to take it a step further, so how do you fully integrate a web form into your site? There are web form nodes for that. And web form nodes are nodes with a web form field, and that's really just an entity reference attached to it. And the web form node module, and by the way, every feature I'm going through is usually broken down to a dedicated module. So you turn on the web form node module, it provides a web form content type. But it's really important to emphasize that any content type can have a web form associated with it. And when you add that association, that relationship from your node to the web form, it turns on a test tab, which we looked at, and a results tab to the node edit tabs. Those are the tabs when you're in a node. It's view, edit, you get some more advanced stuff, like your moderation. I think it'll have some other tabs. And the final thing that happens when you turn on the module is it adds a references tab to all your web forms when you go to edit them. And I'm going to show that to you, but I just wanted this. I have this slide just to show you how simple it is. It's just a field. You add it to your nodes, and there you have the relationship. And some really tips and tricks for web form fields and nodes is, tokens can be used to take that data, that relationship, and pass it from the node that's associated with the web form down to the submission. This is an example where you actually could add a confirmation field to your node, and when you attach that web form to it, you can take that confirmation field on the node and pass that all the way down and use this token to customize the confirmation page per node. I didn't get heavily into computed elements, but they can be used to display node values. And computed elements is an element that, like, you pass a few tokens in, you can display some data. If you're doing an event registration form, you can have a computed element pull, like, the event dates or the location into the submission and make it part of it. And this slide just starts to hint at all the tokens available. And basically every aspect of a web form and the submission data is available with tokens. And there's Twig support in both. Like, you can start getting into Twig to use this data, and you can call these tokens in Twig. So with the web form node demo, I'm going to keep using this one. This is that references tab. So we have this contact form. And it's going to track all your web form instance, all the instances, all the nodes associated with this contact form, but there's none. But if you click Add Web Form, by the way, there's two content types that support web forms: my web form content type and my demo event registration. You go in, and it actually passes, and this you can't see so well, but it passes the web form ID, which allows the node to pre-populate some fields right before. I don't actually have to do anything other than hit save, because it figured out that I want to create a contact web form node. And you can also pass default data into your web form node. The example would be if you want to pass some custom application IDs for event registration, you might want to pass an event registration ID into the form. You can use that using the default submission data. You can also take tokens off. That's where there's just a bunch of different ways to kind of pass data around. Hit save. For this, I really do want to turn this thing off. I'm going to kill it. Now we have this dedicated contact form, and it's a node, and it opens up all those possibilities of placing nodes on your site and access controls. And I'm going to use the test tab. And I'm creating a couple of submissions. There's 1, 2. Now I go to the results tab, and you can see it's only tracking those results for this node. And this is kind of hinting at where the event registration demo goes. So the event registration demo is basically you have an event content type on your site, and you have a registration form. And you take that registration form and you attach it. You can use the same registration form and attach it to all your events, and you'll track the registrants for singular events. It makes it really easy to use the same form over and over again. It also gives you can track all the data across your site and look at it at the same time. Keep going. We're getting towards the end, guys. All right. So how can you extend the web form module? Well, there are add-ons for that. And add-ons are just my way of rephrasing it. They're Drupal module and projects that extend and provide additional functionality to the web form module and Drupal's form API. I bring in form API here because the web form module really is just extending Drupal's form API. So certain modules that add features to form API are available to the web form module. The example I go into is client-side validation. And there's just a lot of useful add-ons available and more to come. And these are some of the breakdowns of the types of add-ons, and this is the third time I mentioned spam protection. You have to look at that list and decide what you're going to do to protect your site. But there's modules to help with validation. With the accessibility issue, there is a jQuery client-side validation module, which I think is working a little better. And what I liked about that module is you actually turn it on and it just works. It's not like you can do anything else other than say, I want to use jQuery client-side validation. You get new elements. Integrations is going to be this key thing where that's where we're going to get, and there's already, MailChimp integration, there's some Salesforce integration coming in. I think HubSpot, where we're going to get these little handlers that'll help you push your data to different third-party services. And sometimes you'll just, personally, some of these you would just want to look at the code and get some idea how doing it. And if you're a developer, you might want to, copy certain aspects of it or extend it in your own way. There's little tweaks to submissions. With email, HTML email is supported, but if you want to send file attachments, you're going to have to go out and get one of Drupal's mail handler modules. I think right now it's Mail System and SMTP are the two that are standing out, and I've had great times with both of them. With REST API integration is definitely going into a dedicated Webform REST module. There's no way the Webform core module is going to keep up with what's going on in headless Drupal. So that's like, if you want to get your web forms to work in mobile apps and stuff like that, that's where people are starting to experiment with literally taking all that element data and making it exportable to like JSON. Configuration management, this is just for developers. I'm not, I tried to stay away from it, but web forms are config entities. You need to think about how you manage your config entities. They will get clobbered if you do a full config import. There's modules like config split and some patterns that people are using to protect your config. Blocks have the exact same problem. Just something to think about. There is a Webform migrate module. I haven't used it. It needs love. It needs someone to say it works great. It's stable.
That's for migrating from Drupal 7 web form
6 and 7
to Drupal 8.
Yep. And I know people have done it successfully, but the problem with migrate is it's like someone does it, ta-da, and then they run off and go somewhere else.
Yes.
So someone successfully used that module a year ago, and I just can't say it's working now. And there's little utility and development tools that I'm going to go and this is like I hammer on spam because it's like Honeypot and Capture are probably my recommendations. Honeypot's just awesome; it just works, and Capture and reCapture supported with it. And I found the combination of those two pretty much cover most spam. I'm just calling out the client-side validation module because you just turn it on and it works. These are some add-ons to help support site builder experience. IMC is really important if you're doing anything with your web forms. Like if you're doing the cute kittens, you want to have IMC so that you can get those files uploaded to your server and on there. And for advanced handling of submissions, there's a Webform views module which allows you to kind of create custom views for the submissions, and there's a Webform analysis, and that was available in the core D7 module of Webform, and I decided to not really, I'm focusing on building forms, and someone took the initiative to start this module, and it's awesome because you can take your submission data and build pie charts for the data coming in and build a dashboard so someone can see exactly what's going on with this form and the data, and it's really cool. I brought up Webform Migrate. So Webform composite tools, you can build your own custom composites, but they're one-offs. They're for just your specific form that you're on. And the composite tools just allows you to make them reusable. So you can define this reusable composite element that's shared across multiple forms. And this is the only developer module I'm going to talk about, but it's the MailLog module, which is just if you're doing any development with emails and you don't want your emails to go out, this is a great module because it stops them from being sent and just logs them. And this is something I'm gradually evolving because it's like, the Webform module without Drupal's ecosystem, it's just another formula, right? I don't really think it's that special. I think the Webform module with Drupal's contributed modules and themes, it's just an entirely different ballgame because once you have people starting to build all these subsystems out, the possibilities become endless on what's capable. And these slides are a little old, but like I actually wrote a blog post. This company, Nexttype, did this. They are working on a module called Maestro. They just released it, and it does business workflows. And it's kind of a mind-blowing. When I saw the demo, I was just blown away because they did a demo of an insurance rate quote system. And that demo helps you understand, because I say workflow and everyone thinks content moderation. You have a node, you save a draft, you publish it. That's pretty simple. I mean, that's a pretty straightforward workflow. They're talking about business workflows, which is where you have to draw a flow chart because you're managing so much data coming in and out. And what their demo of the insurance rate quote system was taking a web form and getting someone's someone filling out an insurance, requesting an insurance quote. They fill out this complex form, they hit submit, And their back-end flowchart starts to show how you could send this data to underwriters, have the underwriters come back with quotes, look at those quotes, and then send off an email to the person requesting the quote and have it filled out. And it's kind of mind-blowing. I have not seen this in Drupal, and it just shows you like the power as all these modules start working together in Drupal 8, what is possible.
What was that called?
Maestro.
Maestro.
Yeah, I don't love the name.
It goes with a composer and a maestro.
I literally took the name of the module and I added, a big, say, Maestro Advanced Workflows, and I'm like, that needs to be the title, so no one forgets it. So the Drupal community to provide these contributing modules, and Core, it's just a real power behind the Webform module. I mean, Core is built off of Form API. It wouldn't exist without it. It's kind of an amazing API, and it kind of helps the Webform module stand out compared to a lot of other form builders. And yes, this is the Drupal community. This is, I'm going to update this photo after DrupalCon. That's me, that's my tiny little head over there. And now we're getting into my little pitch. I want to take a sip. Not should you, but how can you contribute? And how can you contribute to the Webform module? Well, there's the contribute section for that. The contribute section is just this section I've been experimenting with this. There's the contribute module. I've decided to move it into the Webform module. And it just encourages people to join the Drupal community, become a member of the Drupal Association, and contribute to Drupal. And I'm going to demo it because I think this screen's not doing it justice, but it's if you just get someone oriented when they start Drupal. It's really important that early on in their process of using Drupal or installing something like the Webform module, I want them to be like, this is great, and they kind of start to understand where it's coming from. That's the Drupal community, and that it's more than just free software. It's software that the community is building. And the tab is really simple. I want to emphasize this is optional too. You can turn this on. It's only visible to people like admins. And I'll just use my account. And I mean, the breakdown is, I'm looking at this as like these three key pillars of being a member of the community. You need to have an account on Drupal.org. If you want my support, you need to have an account so you can file an issue. If you want the test to run on the Webform module, you need to support the Drupal Association. I don't know any other way to say that. It's kind of insane that people will fight this issue and push back and be like, why support the Drupal? I disagree with decisions they make. People make bad decisions. They also support the code that you just downloaded, and they supported Drupal again, and and I'll throw out a personal complaint. Drupal.org servers should not have gone down during Drupal again. That's not the Drupal Association's fault. It's the community's fault for not providing enough funds to have enough servers to support a situation like that. And that's why people should join the Drupal Association to help them out. And then ultimately, everyone should contribute something back, and there's all these different opportunities and ways to get involved. And I do call that out down here with, some videos about the Drupal Association, and just to show you the UX. This is all experimental. I mean, the Webform module is not experimental, but when I do stuff like this, it's just trying to test the waters. By the way, the goal here is to get someone to engage, to feel like they're part of the community. And I also throw out, I've just talked about it, I have videos in the module that are very similar to what we just talked about, helping people feel more comfortable with being a member of the community. There's my information, and it just pulls my Drupal Association stuff. Join the Drupal Association. I don't know any other way to say it. I mean, one thing to emphasize for people that are like hardcore members of the Drupal community, and why am I harping on this one, is I think it's a small part of a larger problem that needs to be addressed with people getting involved. And it's a very simple point. It's just like, if we can't support our infrastructure, it's a little insane. It's a little weird that I started to realize this that most agencies, and I'll phrase it as agency A approaches organization about Drupal. They don't even mention the Drupal Association. They don't even tell them to really get involved. Their pitch is, we are the Drupal experts, come to us, and we will take care of all your Drupal needs, and then you can go off and don't worry about it. That actually doesn't work well, because it creates little silos, these little organization silos, that are not creating companies that fully understand Drupal, what they're getting into, even hiring the right employees to support Drupal. By them getting involved in the Drupal Association, it's a small step. It's like, by the way, I think I made the mistake. It's like when you're pitching a client on Drupal, it should be part of the initial pitch. It's like, this is how Drupal works. you want the code to come down to your system and not have problems, support your group association. And I'm not, the dollar and cents is it's $15 for an individual and $200 for an organization. And a note there is there's some organizations where they write these amazing case studies about their huge release of Drupal, and they're not members of the Drupal Association. It's embarrassing to them, but I think it's embarrassing to us as people presenting the software that they don't get, they're not getting it early on or understanding it. That was more of a rant than I'll probably do at DrupalCon, but at the time, yeah. Yeah, no, you're not supposed to over-promote stuff, but I'm promoting the Drupal Association. I had nothing, and all I can say about the Drupal Association, I'm personal friends with Neil Schrum in the New York community. He's a great guy. I don't really have any affiliation other than I see this as I see what they're doing and I see it as important. So where can you get help and learn more? Well, there's more information about that. I have a blog, jrockowitz.com, drupal.org, you can kind of find me. Twitter, I also post, if you ping me on Twitter. Actually, really, if you want help with the Webform module, this is where you want to go. There's documentation online. I keep trying to improve it. There's a cookbook with recipes, and I hope people start contributing more. I really think Drupal Answers is like huge in this community now. I personally follow it and respond as best as I can, and there's dedicated threads for Webform in almost every aspect of the community. And ultimately, yeah, there's a Webform issue queue. If you run into a bug, please file it. And the final picture on the Drupal Community and Association is there's the Drupal Association page. If you want really to follow what's going on in Drupal and even the Webform module, you should look at Drupal Planet, the blog, and the email newsletter. That's kind of, that will give you the heartbeat of what's going on in the community. And are we done yet? Yes. And that's Ralph, my great dog. I love the photo because he's, now he's, oh my God, he's about to be 14 years old. He looks like a little puppy. And here, I use a pointer. That thing on the side is like a giant back deposit, like basketball size thing, and he doesn't care at all. He shows like, doesn't bother him. Okay, so questions? I'm gonna go like left to right. Okay.
Actually, I have two. Okay.
I think we have all night.
So, say during the course of a submission, you have a handler, a post handler. It sends off a post to Salesforce or something, or some service, and the service comes back with like a non-200, like a failure or something.
Yeah.
Is there a way to process that through the submission and like alter the page that the person's going to end up at to like maybe fix the submission? Or?
It's a really tricky one. Like, one feature I'm adding, well, I'll focus on the problem, is it's really hard to know when you get those errors how to handle them. I can get you can get confirmation numbers back. So if you go to Salesforce and Salesforce sends a post back of data with a confirmation number, it'll give you a token that you can then insert anywhere into your like web form. You could record it in a hidden element where you can send it to the confirmation page. The problem with dealing with errors is, and I'm kind of baffled by it, is like to properly handle the error. Like someone submits a form, the data comes in, you create a web form submission ID, you hit the CRM, it fails. What do? Do you block them? Do you throw out the data? I mean, all I've gone with is you display an exception message and you record it, log it. I'm going to start implementing a feature depending on the message. Depending on the status code, you can display a different message. But if you're really getting technical, like my experience with remote posts is, I've done custom code where I send the data out because I know I can do it during the validation process. So like I have all the web forms all done, I know it's correct, it's valid, and the last handler in the whole stack is doing the remote post. And then I know it's, like I'm kind of, and in the UI, I don't really, there's no way to do that. That's like so unpredictable to throw out there, so. Okay. Yeah. What's your next question?
And the web form test submission on node pages?
Yeah.
Is that only available if you have the web form node module enabled?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And someone batted around with this idea of adding those tabs to all entities. And I mean, I personally feel like nodes are the key thing. All entities are tracked, but the test results, you turn on the web form node module and you get that. And there is this nuance that I might tweak it, but the web form submission node token only works if you have the web form node module turned on.
Ah.
And people have gotten
That's
stuff out of
another
that.
question I didn't think to ask.
Yeah, that might come up. I thought it was common sense. It says web form submission node, you have the web form node module on, but I'm reconsidering that setup. Other questions going?
I also have 2 questions. The first question is, on a really busy web form where you're getting lots and lots of data being submitted constantly, and you're doing row post to some other thing, have you given any consideration to adding support for batching or queuing those, sending those off to some worker to background process those remote posts?
I've given thought to the concept that if I had someone talking about storing a ton of data coming in, like the numbers were like flabbergasted and crazy, and I can actually show you the setting. It's an interesting one. So my take on that is don't do it in Drupal. no. If you're going to store a ton of data, you should set up like a Node.js MongoDB backend. You just get that data as quickly as possible. You push it to a high-performance system that supports queuing and batching. You could write the code in Drupal. Like someone could write a module to do that. But I want to emphasize there's this feature here where you can turn off the saving of results, but you can go in. So down here, there's custom settings. So you can add custom properties to the form renderer, and you can behave on that. Or you get in here and you can actually change the method that the form's submitting to. And here's what's the nuance here is if I do a post here, it gives you a big fat warning, because basically what I've just done is expose the action handler where you can send it to a different server. Completely, like basically you're using Drupal to build a form. When someone hits submit, that's not going to Drupal. That's going to your other server. You have to handle some of the validation. You're kind of disabling certain aspects of the form, but this makes it possible to just go to that third party, service. And what's your next question?
The second question is, you seem to have more configuration options than friggin' Jira. And I'm wondering.
I can address that. I love that criticism.
I
address it.
8 documents is super powerful. But what I'm wondering is there a need for, say, a light UI versus the full Monty? Can you just flash somebody some basic config things versus giving them the ability to control everything under the sun, depending on the audience and the use case?
Yes, there's formal alternatives for that, and I hate that explanation, but it does work really well because the form, you can go in and go into those settings forms, just alter and do #access equals false on all those properties. And I mean, this screen, what I want to show, let me see if I can go in here. I need someone to sponsor the module, but I had this vision of, there used to be what's called like field permissions, where you get a pretty complex UI, it's meant for developers, where you get in and you see every single property available, and you just check off the boxes of what you don't want. And that's possible with properties. It's a very flat array. It says, here's all the properties that define an element, and then we could tweak those so that they're only available to certain users. I've taken the attitude that it's like power. I personally, with forms, I don't think it should be just normal marketing people running out and building forms. I think it makes more sense to have someone who understands how the data is going to work and checks it. And that's kind of why I went in this approach. I also think it just opens up a lot more possibilities to Drupal. But I'm aware of, by the way, that's why there's all these little nuance, like the hiding and showing the settings, the question mark help boxes, like trying to get it as compressed as possible. And those tabs have made a big difference. So I'm open to suggestions and thought about it. Other questions?
Do these extra elements and all of these fields and stuff, does it work with something like Civi CRM?
Yes, it's like a yes and no answer. So the problem with Civi CRM is they got me really good because in D7, they had this incredible integration. The Webform Civi CRM module was just incredible because basically you go into Civi CRM and say, this is the data I want to collect and I'd like a super flexible web form, and it handled everything and just generated all those elements. And it was a really tightly knit integration. And I've talked to the Civi CRM team, they'd like to get that working, but we haven't gotten there yet. A sticking point for me, one, I don't have the resources to get too far into Civi CRM. A sticking point for me with anyone that's talked to me about integrations, especially like Civi CRM or Salesforce, is we need to figure out more generic tools to do CRM integrations. Like how do we pull, like, is there a way to kind of work with different systems and pull the fields out of that system, the field definitions, and bring them into the Webform module and build a form based on that and letting it work. I'm kind of giving you a cool hint of what I actually envision is Webforms has the potential to sit in front of nodes, where it could take your field definition. I have a prototype of the plugin user interface, and I'm going to look at your node and say, okay, here are all the fields in the node, and give you the ability to set up relationships so that you can have an incredibly flexible form pushing data into Drupal. And this is, okay, to pause for a second for people that don't understand the importance. Webform stores data really flat and simple because its goal is to store a ton of data. It's not as flexible if you used cores like a node or the contact form. That stores it as empty fields, and you get some more relationships. So there's a there's a little bit of a separation there. And the goal is if we can get this mapping working right, where a Webform submission can map to an entity, that nuance goes away. And I see it as there's a threads integrating with Field API, and Mosh started it. And I said, my solution is you have a form, this would be perfect use case. You have a web form that has 150 fields on it. I've seen it, it exists, it happens. The truth is, you only need 20 of those fields to go into a node to do your views or your integration. And this would basically allow you to store everything in the flat web form submission table, and you pick your certain elements that need to go into nodes, and you push it into there. It's a great question.
So that was a really nice collection of widgets
Yeah.
that you have there. What do you think about the idea of splitting just the widgets out into their own modules so that they can be used in, custom coded forms without having to have Webform installed? And they can also negotiate all the jQuery dependencies and stuff like that just in its own module.
I had that vision. I worked on the Webform module, and I had this amazing, it's getting a little technical, but I have this I'm proud of this element. I'm going to just pause and say yes. I remember going cheering myself when I got it to work because, by the way, I hadn't turned on the test module. There's 180 test forms, so I would get straight to any example, but this widget, so we're in here, this widget here that's creating this option is this generic multiple element, and it's called Webform pound multiple, and you pass in an array of elements and it builds this UI, and every single aspect is customizable. So anytime you see anything like this where I have a basically collecting multiple composite values at once, it's this reusable element. I had this dream where you could separate it out, but then I ran into little nuances with the Webform module integration that required me to have certain code that's Webform specific in the element.
Could you have a version that was, sorry, I don't want to get in the weeds here, but that's what we're going to do. Would it be possible to have a more, a Webform free version in a separate module and have Webform extend that element for itself? Or alter the plugin info so that it could do exactly that, where it's Webform takes it over if Webform is there.
Yeah. I think so. I'm okay with having that possibility where we might have to refactor this out, bring it. Also, this would be incredibly useful for core. I don't know how many times I built this UI and it was horrible. But here's we're getting really in the weeds. Is there's some code in there that I'm a little sad. There needs a lot more eyeballs to sort this out. And just the technical. So Field API supports this UI. That code is hard. Okay. So there's certain elements. There's also certain things in the Webform module that, the dismissible error messages that I'm using should just be in core. There's I haven't had the time to get there to be let's fix this. And when I say dismissible, it's these, you have your messages at the top of your form. You should be able to put them anywhere. People have 10 different ways of doing that. You should be able to put them in, they should be dismissible and handle it. So I think the answer is yes, I'd like to get there. I'd like to get a release out, and then gradually pull things out. The final thing about the weeds, and this is something that's going to happen in the next 2 or 3 years, is I think Form API is going to be reworked completely.
I hope so.
Well, I hope so too, but I'm not sure I'm ready for the work because Drupal's trying to go with a front end like React and have a front end framework, and forms are kind of handled differently in front end frameworks, so they're going to have to rethink Form API and how they're handling it. There's a lot of debates on how that's going to go. So I'm hesitant to start creating new elements for an old system. At the same time, Webform module needs to address this use case now. Get out there, get the system, get it working, and hopefully we'll figure out a way to bridge the two and work together. And I think it's going to come up with Drupal.
Sweet.
Other questions? Ready?
So I just want to point out, it doesn't have more configuration options than Vim. But also, I've seen the issue you mentioned that Moshe opened about using fields, and I just want to make sure that people are aware that although Webform uses Form API and the Entity API, it does not use the Field API, which is why you need a separate Webform Views module, and why some things, even with Webform Views module, are still hard.
Yeah,
But it's because of the storage issue, right? You want to be able to store it flat because you want tons of data.
it's a storage issue, but I think it's important. I'll really lay exactly where I feel about Webform versus Field API. And that was the slide at the beginning where I wasn't going to do the alternatives. Right? Field API is to collect data to build a website and rich applications and have relationships. Webforms is about building a form to just collect a submission, a single piece of data that's just here's a data set, and that's it. And there's slightly different use cases, and the focus here is building fancy, getting really rich forms. Versus Drupal, in a lot of ways, Field API is getting rich data with limiting. There are some clear limitations when you start to use the contact module and what you can and can't do in terms of building a UI. That's the alternative in Core. Core has this model, and yeah, it's I took the slides out, and it's not included, but absolutely check out the contact module before you use Webforms. If it addresses your use case, use it. Always use Core before Contrib. That's my take on it.
I was one of those, why can't just all unify and use real fields? But my takeaway from this talk is that Webform is the user interface for Form API that I never knew I needed, and I do, because it's so much nicer to build forms this way than to have to look up all random elements that aren't even there for a lot of these things and try to write your own, which I've done some of that. So so I built a little donation module, the give module on contact and contact storage, or stole from contact storage to do it basically. And I sort of wish I had, time-wise, whatever I had done on this, I'm going to be looking at how to integrate it. And that would require you to be able to save a bunch of data and exclude the credit card data. If you're going to send it off to
Credit card.
Yeah.
A
lot of things there.
I had a prototype of a credit card element, and I took it out because I realized that was just not going to happen. And I saw some demo of Square. Was it Square? Some payment provider was stunning because they use iframes to get the data in your elements. I'm hesitant. Payment is in this weird transition where having it even in Drupal, and I love Commerce. I think it's an amazing system, but the actual payment process is a whole different.
So is that module, which I'd love to switch to use it, but I agree with you on the payment stuff, it's scary. And then for the CRM integration, it's the CRMs need to tell us what fields they have, and then you have a mapper, like you were starting to say about mapping to fields in a node, you map to fields in a CRM. And I built a really, really stupid, simple version of that for the get response, which is not even a CRM, but the get response is collecting data. And I sort of wish I had tried to build that with Webform also, but it's just a really, simple mapping. It's take this kind of form element, this is a text field, this is a text area, this is something else, and map it to the related one in there. And I think that could be a really, really powerful addition on top of this that would start to let this be used to talk directly to CRMs.
Zapier is amazing. Zapier, I think it's Zapier. Someone did a demo, it's kind of funny, it's one of those systems. I haven't even used it because I looked at the demo, I was like, this makes perfect sense to me. It's a third-party service where you point your web form to push the data to, you get your first submission, and then they basically say to you, what would you like to do with this submission? And the demo, by the way, when I talk about demos, they're all on Drupal.org, and there's a list of blog posts, and this blog post on the road just shows, you submit the form and it goes right into a Google Sheet. was like, he did it in 5 minutes. He just walked through his app. The catch is they charge him. And I don't know it's a lot, but it's kind of, that's why I'm not recommending these apps for that reason. Other questions? Sure.
Tiny little one. For the email preview,
Yeah.
are you, so some of the HTML email modules let you send that, with HTML taken from a theme or something else, and you're looking at this in the admin theme. So for the give module, I did.
I'm proud to
a
say
preview,
I
and
fixed that.
You did fix that?
Yes, I was shocked that no one caught that, and I was sending email, and I was like, oh my god, it's sending it through the 7th theme, so I have that. It's like some kludgy code, not kludgy, it's like a wrapper that changes the thing. I mean, the catch-22 here is, I can only change it to the default theme of the site. But at least it's predictable, because it was getting unpredictable because you were on, when you're submitting, that's a great question. No one has yet to catch that issue, that you're submitting a form and you're in the Bardic theme, it's going to theme it with the Bardic styles, and if you're in 7, you resubmit it, it's going to go through 7. But so it sticks to the default.
And in your preview, were you able to use the
Well, the
right
preview is not really,
It's supposed to be.
it's just using a lightweight CK editor, and there's some limit. I mean, email's really hard. It's not really meant to do marketing emails with fancy styles and images. You can get away with it, but it's, I think when people start doing that, they go into the theme layer. Like they get into the template, and they just are like, this is the template I have, and I'm going to take the data and populate it, and it works. I haven't seen, I was really like MailChimp crazy awesome. Who knows? Other questions? Cool. Well, thank you guys.